So you just graduated college, maybe you've landed a job, maybe you're still looking. But what you might be realizing now is that it's time to figure out your personal finances. Most people think of finances as an afterthought, that their finances will figure themselves out. However, 57% of people are not financially literate. The good news is that after analyzing thousands of hours of financial content, I found 5 money practices that experts recommend to help you understand your finances. By the way, my name is Mitchell, and I graduated college just 2 years ago. I'm now working as an accountant, and I'm going to lay out the 5 personal finance tips that I wish I knew when I graduated college. The first thing that you should do is to build up an emergency fund. This is a sum of money that is stored in your bank account, not to be touched unless there's an actual emergency. This will act as your financial safety net because things aren't always guaranteed to go how we want. Your car might get wrecked, you might take a trip to the hospital, and all sorts of other costly mishaps could happen, which hopefully none of them do, but in case they do, I want you to be ready. And unfortunately, more likely than not, there will be something that eventually pops up that you need a backup stash of cash for. Now, how do you go about building this up? I think it's important to build your emergency fund rather quickly because of that element of unpredictability that we just talked about. So for a couple of months, I would focus heavily on putting all your extra money outside of what is spent on your needs into this emergency fund. And keep putting your money into it until you get to a pile of at least 3 months worth of expenses. To figure out what 3 months worth of expenses is for you, you'll probably need to go through an exercise of taking a look at your bank and credit card statements for the last month and categorizing all your spending. Figure out how much of that spending is going towards your needs, aka food, housing, insurance, and how much is going to your wants, aka dining out, alcohol, activities. Your 3 months worth of expenses that you should be targeting as your emergency fund goal would be the 3 months of necessary expenses. Because in an emergency, you will not want to be spending extra cash on non-necessary expenses. Ultimately, 3 months is enough of a buffer where if you're out of work for a little bit, you won't go completely broke. And my hope for you is you never have to touch this emergency fund, and it can more serve as a starting place that allows you to be free from your finances and make decisions not out of scarcity. Now, once you've built up an emergency fund, the next thing you should target is getting out of debt. As a recent graduate, you're more likely than not to have some sort of student loans that you're now your responsibility to pay off. In fact, the median student loan debt in the United States is somewhere between $20,000 and $25,000, with the average interest rate of 6.5%. That means over the course of a 10-year loan, you will pay roughly $9,000 towards interest alone. I'm sure you've heard the student loan horror stories of people who are perpetually stuck paying student loans because they missed payments, were not paying the full amounts, and never really had the knowledge/opportunity to pay them off. On top of these student loans, you might have credit card debt or expensive car loans that also should be paid down for the same reason that you don't want to be throwing tons of money at interest. Now, again, how do you do this? First off, make sure to make your minimum monthly payments on all of your debt, but then I would also start putting any leftover money towards paying the balance on your debt. There's 2 ways to go about paying down the debt, which is up to you to decide which one would work best for you. The first option, aka the avalanche method, is mathematically the smarter way to go. The goal here is to pay down the loan with the highest interest rate first, since that will save you the most money. And once you pay off that one, move on to the next, and so on and so forth. However, another method is to start with what is actually the smallest debt first and work your way up. This is known as the debt snowball method. The reason some people find more success this way is because they can maintain motivation throughout the journey because they can quickly see the results of their hard work. I personally prefer the avalanche method because I think more in a logistical sense, but you can do whichever you prefer. Now, if you build up your emergency fund and get out of debt, you are already putting yourself in a great position. These 2 areas are the major roadblocks that stop people from becoming financially free. So, if you can get them out of the way early, you won't have as much to stress about. And now, we want to move on from the foundation steps, which another thing I wish I knew more about when graduating college was investing, and specifically investing in retirement. Investing is how you can really generate wealth and will likely be the biggest growth factor in your wealth over the course of your life if done right. The reason being is that investing is helped out by compound interest, which is easier to demonstrate using an example than through words. So let's say you invest $500 a month for 40 years and you earn an average return of 7%. Because your returns keep compounding, you will end up with over $1.1 million even though you only put in $240,000. That's almost 5x what you put in. Now, this is a great example of the power of investing, but you don't need to start with $500 a month. So if that's not plausible for you, that's okay. I think the important thing here is to get into the habit of investing frequently, even if it's just $50 or $100 a month. The point is that you start building your portfolio when you are young, because then you will be able to take advantage of time and compound interest. Now that we've covered the investing basics, let's talk about why I specifically talked about investing in retirement accounts. The reason I highlight these is that the retirement accounts have certain tax advantages that make them more appealing in the long run than traditional brokerage accounts. See, there are two main types of retirement accounts, a 401k and a Roth IRA. I'll link another video of mine up here where I go into much more depth on these accounts, but here is a quick crash course. A 401k is sponsored by your employer, and a Roth IRA can be set up through many of the major brokerages. The advantage of a 401k is that you designate money to go into this account before it gets taxed, which, depending on your tax rate, could be saving you anywhere from 20 to 30%. Then, when you get to retirement age and you begin withdrawing the money, you will pay the taxes on it then. A Roth IRA, on the other hand, works in the opposite way. You invest with post-tax dollars, and when you withdraw during your retirement, you don't have to pay any taxes. There's no telling which one will be better, so I think a good idea is to invest in a mix of both of these accounts. And before moving on, let me put a quick disclaimer that you aren't guaranteed to earn money when you invest. You have to be smart with your investments and do your research before you make any specific investments. What I personally invest in and what you can look into are index funds and ETFs, which this will hopefully help to serve as a starting point for your investing. Now, the fourth thing is getting comfortable with budgeting. Budgeting is something that I found to be much easier than expected. There are tons of great budgeting methods out there, and I think as you graduate college, you should just try them and figure out which one works best for you. I will link a spreadsheet template of the budget I personally use down below, but the reason I think it is so important to begin budgeting now is so that you can begin getting comfortable with facing your finances. A major problem that many people run into is that they don't keep a pulse on their finances and they don't notice things are going south until it's far too late. They are already under a mountain of debt and financial difficulties, and that's not what I want to happen to you. I learned a lot about my finances when I began to budget. It taught me what my financial blind spots were in areas I didn't know I was overspending. It allowed me to get a grasp on these things and make the necessary changes to my habits. So yeah, I hope you too can learn a lot by doing the simple act of budgeting. Now, the fifth thing I'd like to share is that you should begin to build your credit if you haven't already done so already. Maybe you already have, and if so, good for you. But now that you've graduated, it's a good time to start building it if you haven't. Your credit score is built up through a variety of different factors, but the main thing you need to know is that it measures your reliability as a borrower. A higher credit score means that you're more trustworthy to lenders, and this becomes especially important later in life when you want to buy a house because it allows you to get better mortgage rates, which potentially can save you hundreds of thousands of dollars. The easiest way to build your credit, and the way I recommend doing it, is open up a credit card. If you're just getting started, I would advise you to pick one with no annual fee, as you want to keep this card open indefinitely. That's because part of your credit score is made up of the length of your credit history, so you never want to cancel your first credit card. If you had a high annual fee credit card as your first card, you might be tempted to cancel it at some point because the fee gets to be too much, but then it would negatively impact your score. Just save yourself the difficulty and start out with a no annual fee credit card. Now, the most important thing to know about credit cards is that you need to spend only the money you can afford to pay off at the end of the month. To avoid hurting your credit score and going further into debt, you need to pay your credit card off in full every month. Never leave a balance on there, and you will be good to go, and your credit score will increase without you having to worry about it. But with that, I hope these tips can be helpful to you as you start this new phase of life, and let me know if you have any questions, and I'll try to help out in the comments below. If you like this video, consider checking out this video over here that YouTube thinks you might like as well.